Hello everyone, salam, adab, namaste and welcome to today's event. Today's event is very different from our usual stuffs. It is on Pathaan movie, a recent Pathaan movie, which has created a big noise in India, or what you call a big hangama in India. And so we have rightly put the name, the Pathaan Phenomenon. Why this movie has become so important, besides that it has smashed all the records in India, 1,000 crore as of now. This is unheard of. So what is so special in this movie? It has a general movie things, but at the same time, this movie tells a lot through these narratives. So what we are going to do is, Dr. Huma Parveen is going to introduce the main speaker as well as probably the theme, and Professor Asim Siddiqui will take it from there. And the concluding remarks will be given by Professor Sarojit Mukherjee, who is the Professor of Department of English at the University of Allahabad. Professor Asim Siddiqui is very well known to our audience. Multiple times he has given presentation. He is professor and probably still chairman of the Department of English at Aligarh Muslim University. He is a well-known literary critic and columnist. And so welcome you all. And now I invite Dr. Huma Parveen for the introductory remarks.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the invitation. And hello and welcome everyone who's joining us from India and America and other parts of the world. Today, the topic of the talk is the Pathaan Phenomenon. And we're going to listen to Dr. Mohammad Asim Siddiqui, who's basically an expert in literary theory, particularly structuralism, feminism, Indian and Pakistani writing in English, cultural studies, and film studies, among others. And he was also Fulbright Fellow at New York University in 2007. And he's also been on the editorial board of several literary and cultural journals. He continuously keeps writing regular columns on arts and culture in several different online portals. He also writes film reviews. He contributes columns to The Hindu, ndtv.com and rediff.com. His articles also keep appearing in Hindustan Times, The Statesman, The Indian Express, The Pioneer, and several other newspapers. He's also the managing editor of the project of the Urdu translation of complete works of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a project of the Government of India, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Actually, there's much more that can be said about Dr. Asim Siddiqui's achievements, but owing to the paucity of time, I would rather prefer to be concise. And of course, we're eager to listen to what he has to say about the topic, the Pathaan Phenomenon. The concluding remarks of this talk will be delivered by Professor Sarojit Mukherjee, who's a professor of English at University of Allahabad. And besides, he's also a member of the Committee of Center of Film and Theatre Studies. So his areas of interest they, include green studies and women's studies. Going on from here, talking about the topic of discussion today, that is the Pathaan Phenomenon. I mean, the film is very topical, as has been mentioned by the host, that, it has been declared a blockbuster in every sense. And it has been receiving positive reviews from critics, from moviegoers, and literally everyone. It has been smashing all box office collection records. And it has been reviewed by many people, trade analysts and who not. I mean, almost everyone has been giving reviews on the film. However, even talking about the veteran film analyst, Taran Adarsh, she went on to say that, Pathaan is the movie through which Shah Rukh Khan has come back with a vengeance. He has kind of silenced all his critics. And he goes on to say that the film works due to star power, due to its soul, song, style, substance, and of course, SRK. However, looking at it from the perspective of a student student of film studies, as people who study films, we need to read between the lines. There's more than meets the eye. So the topic of today's talk, as it betrays, the Pathaan phenomenon, it is aimed at looking at the film from a different lens. The film is probably much more than what appears to be in first glance. It's a very intelligently crafted cinematic delight, which weaves the story on screen and off screen, probably imbibing the narrative that has been prevalent in recent years. So I'm sure Dr. Asim Siddiqui is going to present a very nuanced account of the blockbuster and expand our horizon of understanding the Pathaan phenomenon. With this, I invite and present the stage to Dr. Asim Siddiqui. Thank you, everyone.
Ji Asim sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Huma, for a very generous introduction and also introducing the topic so clearly and so succinctly. At the very beginning of this talk, one question may arise that this particular platform has organized discussions on lots of subjects, and film is probably making its debut on this platform. So here, and this debut has to be good also. So I'm very conscious also of making this debut as far as this particular film is concerned. As Huma rightly pointed out, that this particular film has been discussed a lot, and various aspects of this film have been discussed. And as Razi Saab also said at the beginning, that it has smashed all box office records. In fact, he talked in terms of its economics, that how it has done the business of more than 1,000 crores. So obviously that is one very important aspect of cinema, which you can say that it is the economic aspect of a film. And since a feature film is a collaborative venture, since a feature film is a very big affair, so first of all, any film is a kind of economic event. And that's why when there is a controversy about a film or there is any issue about a film, all filmmakers actually worry a lot whether that controversy can affect them or it can affect the whole business. So that economic aspect is very important. And here it brings me to one very important aspect of film, that you can enter a film from various perspectives. And many trade analysts, they have talked about this film in terms of its economics. But of course, there are many other aspects also of filmmaking. And one very important aspect is its technical aspect. That means how music, how camera work, how different shots, how they all come together, and how they create a kind of effect. We see that somebody like Alfred Hitchcock was a master at making suspense thrillers. And many people actually who tried to copy Alfred Hitchcock's work, they failed miserably. Why? Because they did not have that kind of technical expertise, or rather they did not have that expertise to put all those things together. That means film writing, camera work, suspense, music, soundtrack, and of course, many, many other aspects of filmmaking. As I said, that it is a kind of collaborative work where a number of people are involved. So apart from its economics, of course, technical aspect is also very important. How one decides to shoot a film. Many of us must have seen K. Asif's magnum opus Mughal-e-Azam. And there is one particular shot there where you can see a glass house and there are different mirrors. And that shot actually was very difficult to shoot, that entire frame. So that was K. Asif's expertise actually, that he was able to shoot from impossible angles a particular shot. And here, of course, many of us who study the art of the cinema, they also study this particular aspect, technical aspect. There is yet another very important aspect of any film, and that is the psychological aspect. That means what kind of effects does a film produce on the viewers? And it is not only a kind of effect that a film produces on viewers, but sometimes what kind of meaning is also put by the filmmaker. And here it brings me to one very important thing that this film has tried to actually present. many novels, many poems, and of course, films also can have that kind of self-referential element. By self-referential, I mean, when Keats, for example, writes his very famous poem, Ode to a Nightingale, at that time, Keats was suffering from many ailments. And somehow those ailments are also part of that poem, but one reads that poem and one makes complete sense of that poem, and that those ailments somehow do not interfere with the reading of the poem. But any autobiographical element can be noticed. The same thing is true about Shakespeare also. For example, he was writing his plays 400 years ago, but still when we read many plays of Shakespeare, we try to go back to that time. We try to just unravel some references in Shakespeare's works, and we try to connect some dots by talking about Shakespeare's life and his work and how there is a kind of relationship between the two. So this psychological aspect where a filmmaker can put something into a film, some meaning into a film, or he can introduce his own life into a film, or aspects of his life into a film, that also has to be very, very subtle, and it has to be interpreted, it has to be decoded. If it is too obvious, then of course all subtlety will be lost. So this is one very important aspect of this film, Pathaan. I'll come to this. But whether the film starts as a kind of economic venture, whatever technical expertise a film may have, and we know that a film made in 2023 has better technical expertise than possibly a film made in 1950s. Whatever psychological effects a film may produce, but at the end of the day, in the final analysis, any film is a kind of political affair also. It exists in a socio-political context. It produces meanings which are political in nature, and its intention is always political. Sometimes that politics is overt, and sometimes that politics is covert. And at other times, politics can be read by others, even though the director or producer may not have intended that politics into the film. Now, this last point, intentionality about a film or intentionality about a work, that also is very important. One can say that the director or the filmmaker did not put this meaning into a film. But once the film is out, once the film is producing some effects, once the film is watched by millions, then it is in public domain. And we can never overread a film. We can never overread a film. We can never overinterpret a film. So if a film is there, whether the filmmaker intended a meaning, whether he put that meaning into it deliberately or not, but as audience, as cinegoers, as consumers, as observers, we are absolutely free to interpret that film in different ways. That means we can look at those meanings, because film is also a kind of political event. Here, if I just give a brief reference to many different theories of films, one can make a broad division of many theories which stress the element of production, how something is produced, how something is made. But there is also the important angle that is of consumption, where people consume a product, or if consumption is a kind of term which gives an idea of a passive listener or a passive receiver, we can use the word observer. So that means there are theories which emphasize the role of the observer, role of the consumer, who makes meaning of all those images, of all those sounds, of all those elements which make a film. And of course, the producer and the consumer, they are two different, there can be two different perspectives. I'm just giving you one example, how in the cinema hall, different people can watch different films, observing the same screen, observing the same image, following the same music. And here I just want to give one reference. one colleague, a very worthy colleague in a different department, we were watching the film Heather. That was Vishal Bhardwaj's film Heather. After watching that film, I wrote a column in the Hindu on Heather, and my colleague said these words to me, that it appeared as if we were watching two different films. And the reason was that Heather was a kind of adaptation of Shakespeare's Hamlet. I have read Shakespeare, I have read Hamlet, and actually I have read some criticism also on Hamlet. So I was able to connect many dots which others may not have, but that does not mean that others did not enjoy that film. A film can appeal to different people in different ways. And that's why many blockbusters actually achieve that kind of quality. So when we come back to this film, Pathaan, I made this little theoretical discussion to suggest that we can never overread a film. We can never overread a film because a film communicates at different levels. And another thing that I, as a student of literature, I must bring in here, when we read poetry, and whether we read Urdu poetry or English poetry, if that poetry or a couplet is paraphrased, and if we say that the poet Ghalib is trying to say this in this, but once it is paraphrased, that meaning is no longer there, because following a couplet, listening to a couplet itself is an experience, because that experiential quality is also important about poetry. And similarly, when we talk about a film, when we paraphrase, then also actually we are not doing justice, but rather, much like poetry, that experience is here simply interpreted and analyzed, but the experience of watching a film is something entirely different. And there is an expression, heresy of paraphrase. Heresy of paraphrase. That means once we paraphrase poetry, the entire effect of poetry is lost. But as critics, as interpreters, we do it all the time. And as film critics also, we do it all the time. So that is the job of the critics, to interpret. And on this platform, we are trying to do that. Now, coming back to this film, Pathaan, we know that all these things apply to this film also. And here, if we see the psychological aspect of the film, and if we see the political aspect of the film, both are important. Of course, since the film is made in 2023, released in 2023, it is a big economic affair. In terms of technique, or in terms of technical skills, the film is spectacular. Or you can say that all possible camera work, all possible sound effects, they are beautifully blended into the narrative of the film. So I'm not looking at that also. But one can say that because these days there is one particular kind of cinema which is called spectacle film, where actually film is not known by its narrative. It is not known by its story, but rather it is reduced to some spectacles, some grand spectacles. And we do have those spectacles in this film also. You have many of those spectacles which actually defy logic, which defy any causality, but they are also part of the narrative that we, so maybe at that time, we just suspend our disbelief. And that is an expression that when you watch a film, you don't try to see everything on the basis of reason, but rather we try to suspend our reason, we try to suspend our disbelief for a while to watch a film. Otherwise, we cannot enjoy a film. So at the technical level, of course, it works like that. It is a spectacle film. It offers beautiful colors, beautiful dance sequences, so on. I'm not going into that also. But this one very important angle about the film is that, and I have written also a column, somebody can share the link here. The column appeared in Rediff. And I'm very happy to say that when I wrote that column, after that, actually, that line was taken up by many commentators. But when I wrote that column at that time, that interpretation was reasonably novel. So what exactly is this particular thing? You see, Shah Rukh Khan film is also a kind of statement about Shah Rukh Khan, by Shah Rukh Khan. And I see that this is one very important line of reading in the film. Because if you see many interesting terms which are used in the film, there is the use of the term mutate, there is the use of the term undercover, there is the use of the term covert research. I don't think that people watching in single screen theaters in a small city would know the meaning of the word mutate or undercover or covert research. I don't think they will know the meaning, but they still enjoy the film. That means Pathaan is probably a more intelligent film than it appears on the surface. So this means that this is one very important aspect. And another very important thing that I can take up is Huma mentioned the aspect of topicality. And topicality is also important because if you see the entire history of Indian films, or especially Bombay films, you'll see that there are different phases also. See, for example, if you see the cinema of 1950s, or if you see the cinema of 1930s and 40s, you will see those mythological films, and then you will see those historical romances. And the apogee of that historical romance was Mughal Azam. But before that, there were a number of films. For example, a film made on Humayun, or film made on the life of Jahangir, for example, the movie Pukar. So that was actually a trend, first of mythological films, and then of films which in fact delve into history or historical romances. And Mughal Azam was the zenith of that kind of filmmaking. And of course, you also see that in 60s, one particular category called Muslim socials appeared on the scene. And Muslim socials were hardly real. That means they did not talk about the issues of Muslim, but rather they portrayed a kind of decadent upper class, or decadent Nawabi culture. So that was in 60s. And of course, Mere Mehboob is one such film in that genre. But if you see the parallel cinema movement, especially in 70s, and Muslim socials actually never died out. They appeared in new forms. So for example, in films like Dastak or many other films, for example, Bazaar, then suddenly those Muslim socials started taking up many themes, and especially themes of existence, themes of certain social classes, poor social classes. So that means there were different trends. And of course, from 70s, you have that angry young man persona of Amitabh Bachchan, and later you'll also see. So that means there are different trends. Now, recently, when Bollywood has not been doing well, and there was also kind of anxiety that what will work, and nobody actually knows the formula what will work. Nobody knows the formula. So that means even great filmmakers like Yash Chopra fail miserably sometimes. Aditya Chopra can fail miserably because nobody has just got access to a secret code which can make a film successful. But then there are efforts also, especially now if you see the context, many South Indian films were doing very well. And there was the kind of opinion that Hindi cinema has seen its end now. Now, so one such formula actually, which has been working, and especially in Hollywood, and I'm talking about Marvel films made by Marvel, and that is where you have a kind of spy universe. That means there are characters, big heroes, they meet each other in different terrains, in different settings, and they all are big figures. So there is a kind of universe. Those of you who have studied, for example, novels of Ibn Safi, you'll recall that in Ibn Safi also you had a kind of universe of criminals, and universe of policemen or investigative officers. And it was only in one novel where Imran and Faridi actually met. But otherwise, Imran worked in a different line. And of course, Faridi also had a different path. But of course, there were many criminals also, international criminals, say like criminals like Finch or Senghi. And it was Imran or Faridi. They in fact met those criminals again and again. Julia, Bumblebee of Kohima. Anyway. So what we see here, that was a kind of spy universe. And that was a kind of universe created by Ibn Safi. Now here, there is an effort to create this universe in this film. And how do we see this? Again, we'll say that this is a kind of retrospective decision. In some years ago, there was a film, Ek Tha Tiger. And there was another film, its sequel, you can say, Tiger Zinda Hai. And then there was an unrelated film, War, in 2019. Now, Tiger series, of course, there was some link, but War appeared to be a different film. But now when this film Pathaan comes, it tries to connect itself to all these three films. So that means if one has watched all those three films, then one can possibly see that kind of intertextual element into them. So that means if Tiger is a spy, and if Kabir is a spy, and then the character of Pathaan is introduced, he is also a spy. And of course, in the film also, you have a grand entry of Tiger in one scene. And there is also a promise that there will be more such films where Tiger will need the help of Pathaan. So that means there is also this promise. Usually, if the film had flopped, then probably this promise also would not have been fulfilled. But because the film is a hit, so we are very sure that there will be many other films also which will explore this spy universe. And of course, why not mention Rohit Shetty also, another filmmaker who is known for his action film. Rohit Shetty tried to create a kind of a cop universe, say Singham, and of course many others. But that has not worked as well so far. So that means here, in a way, this is a kind of cinema which is taking its inspiration from Hollywood, from Marvel films, and from that spy universe. And this spy universe has worked. And of course, Shah Rukh Khan has made a big comeback. I'll use the word comeback after 4 years, because that is how we see this film. In one very interesting interview, actually, Shah Rukh said, somebody, I think it was Rajesh Sharma, or somebody was asking him, do you sometimes fear that somebody else will take up your position? Somebody else will be a megastar like you, and you will be replaced by that star? And he, in a very witty manner, said, no, I don't think so. And even I was surprised, why was he trying to be so immodest? And then he said, I'm the last star. I'm the last superstar. And I think apart from wit, there is some truth in this. And the truth is that maybe we would see a different kind of cinema. And of course, if you see, if you survey the scene in the last 15 years or so, then you will see the birth of independent cinema, or there is a term also, indie cinema, where there are some independent filmmakers, and actually they position their film in opposition to the mainstream Bollywood. And sometimes they also, indie cinema also explores some offbeat themes, and they are not as dependent on the market as probably big Bollywood producers. So that way, Shahrukh, there is some grain of truth also, because indie cinema has also come a big way in the last few decades. And there are also takers for indie cinema, and especially with the coming of OTT platforms. Now, there is also a challenge coming from OTT platforms. And so indie cinema probably has a very good feature on OTT platforms also. So that way, when we see Shah Rukh Khan making this film or making a statement through this film, then that also becomes important. Now, coming back to this angle, which I just mentioned, that it is also kind of a statement by Shah Rukh Khan. Now, here also, we must know that whether it is a book, a novel, or it is a film, we can see the presence of the filmmaker in a film. There is one particular theory in cinema, which we call auteur, for example, auteur cinema, Auteur cinema is auteur is a French word. It translates as director. And one very famous French director, Reno, once said that a director makes just one film in his lifetime. Even if he has made 15 films, he makes one film in his lifetime, because all those films sometimes bear his signature. And these days, if you see Romantics, for example, it is being streamed on Netflix. It is a celebration of Yash Raj films. It is a celebration of Yash Chopra style of filmmaking. You can see the signature of Yash Chopra in most of his films. And similarly, you can see, for example, somebody like Sanjay Leela Bansali as a kind of filmmaker whose signature is there on most of his films, especially see those sets, those colors, for example. So that way, when we say that a filmmaker or a director or a big actor puts himself into a film, we are not saying something unusual. This has been the case. This has been the case with the literary works also. And it is said that very often the first novel of a writer comes from his life. So it is more challenging to write the second novel rather than the first novel, because everyone has a first novel inside him. So when, for example, Shah Rukh Khan makes a statement through his film, how is this statement made? Here it is very important to understand that unless those statements are perfectly blended with the narratives of the film, they cannot work. And here they are actually blended perfectly with the narrative of the film. So if we see this film, then we can go back to some earlier films also of Shah Rukh Khan, where this effort was there. Now, see a film titled Billu. In Billu, the main lead was Irfan Khan, but Shah Rukh Khan played Sahir Khan there. He's a film actor there. So in a way, he's playing himself in that film. Okay, that was one film. Then there was another film, Fan. And Fan was a reasonably good film. But what happened in Fan was Shah Rukh Khan played a big superstar himself. And you can see all his mannerisms. You can see his star persona in that movie, Fan, Fine. So that was also a kind of reference to his own life. And then there is a beautiful film, Zero. Many people did not like that film, but I like that film quite a bit, especially its humor. And of course, I mean, some aspects of that film. In Hero, you see that there are, in one sequence, all leading ladies of Shah Rukh Khan are present. And he is playing a dwarf in that film, very short statured person in that film. And in one sequence, he says that, look, I can bring these stars down. I can bring these stars down. And all those ladies are trying to encourage him. And these are all ladies who have worked in his films as his leading heroines. Now, he fails to bring down those stars. So in a way, that is a kind of meta reference to his own insecurity at that time. That, okay, there was a time when he was a big star, he could bring the stars down, but now has come a time when he's trying, but he is not able to bring those stars down. And even when those ladies are goading him, encouraging him, he's not able to do that. So that was also kind of, in fact, one can even go back to a film which is pretty old now, Om Shanti Om, which also had that kind of element where you see all his leading ladies are present. So that means there were efforts in this direction, some references in his earlier film, but Pathaan probably beats them all. Because if you connect some dots, if you see some important lines in the film, and I'm sure that many of you would have seen that film, first just think about that post-credit scene. Post-credit scene, which is not really a part of the film, but it is a part of the film in the sense that Pathaan and Tiger are sitting, they're talking to each other, and they are certainly not Shah Rukh and Salman, but they are dressed as Pathaan, they are dressed as Tiger. But they are very much Shah Rukh and Salman at that time. And they say that we have been working for 30 years. Now time has come to let others. And then there is that funny scene, but there is that, and he has that some talent. And Shah Rukh, Shah Rukh contradicts him. No, he does not have that talent. That, usme koi baat hai. No, 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 not even he. So is it a reference to some usurpers? Is it a reference to possibly, I thought that it was a reference to Ranveer Singh and Ranbir Kapoor, to emerging stars? Or it is open to interpretation. One could think about some others also, two other stars also. It could be anyone. But and then says, but देश की खातिर अब हम ही को करना पड़ेगा. So that means that reference to their own work is very, very obvious in that post-credit scene. And if we leave that alone, then you see that there is a reference in the film when the character played by Dimple Kapadia, she actually is talking to her assistant, and her assistant says, why is it that the mere mention of Pathan's name makes people uncomfortable? Why is it that the mere mention of his name makes people uncomfortable? Now, this is a kind of reference to the kind of ecosystem that we are living in. Shah Rukh Khan, reference to Shah Rukh Khan, and you see that troll start working. And of course, so if you see many important controversies which have broken out in the last decade, one controversy was that when My Name is Khan was released, before that Shah Rukh Khan, because he is also the owner of Kolkata Knight Rider, so he had said that he thinks that Pakistani players can play or should play in IPL. So after that, there was a big protest, and of course, especially in Bombay, and My Name is Khan, its release was delayed. So if we see, and then a few years also, 2 years ago also, when his son was arrested on some charges which were proved to be actually false. So that time also, actually, you see that whenever there was any mention of his name, so this particular thing that why do people feel uncomfortable when his name comes up? Now, there is also one very interesting trailer of the film. And in the trailer, actually, which was shown earlier, the character played by Dimple Kapadia says that he was seen last time and he was caught in a mission. He was caught in a mission. That means nothing has been heard about him. For 2 years, nothing has been heard about him. And this also is a kind of reference that Shah Rukh Khan's last film came 4 years ago, and nothing has been heard of him. And then there is a reference that in the trailer that 2 years ago, he was caught in a mission. Zero bombed at the box office. So that was...
Asim, you want to show because we have not seen the trailer. You are referring to a trailer, but you have not shown it.
No,
actually,
this
it's
trailer
not
is
needed.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's not needed actually.
Rafat, I didn't mean that. He has sent some clips.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, you can show that clip. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We can come back to this discussion. Yeah.
No. You mentioned, that's why I said you keep on mentioning.
And actually that I tried to see some videos, but they are not available as such.
Continue, please continue.
And in fact, when I don't try to see them, they are available sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So here, actually, I'm trying to make my narrative as clear as possible. So here, actually, in the class also, I have never used PowerPoint presentation. I believe in power of speech here. So here also, when we see that he was last heard, that his last film was Zero, and it did not succeed. So it is a kind of reference to Zero also, that he was caught in that mission. Then, of course, there is one very interesting word in the film, a Japanese word, kintsugi. Now, if you see, this word is repeated number of times. And actually, its film writer, Abbas, has said, and you see that a film can also be written in different ways, where a character is speaking, and the character actually is speaking so that nobody in the audience misses the meaning. In a way, that character is speaking to the audience. Intelligent filmmaking is not like that. Intelligent filmmaking actually leaves a lot for the audience to interpret. But there are films of different kinds. But if you see the use of this word, kintsugi, in the film, Japanese word, it is explained also. And what exactly is the meaning of this word? It is the Japanese art of putting broken pottery pieces back together with gold. That means if there are broken pottery pieces, then they can be put together by the use of gold. Now here, this is a very rich line of interpretation. What is broken actually? We hear so much about divisive discourses. We hear so much about divisions. So what exactly is broken? Is it a reference to some kind of sectarian division, ideological division, which is very much part of the ecosystem? Or who will actually put together these broken pieces? So one very interesting way of looking at this is that Pathaan, the film, has managed to work like a kintsugi. That means all sorts of people, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their ideology, irrespective of their age, irrespective of their nationality, they have flocked to the cinema halls. So in a way, Pathaan has worked as a kind of kintsugi. And then another thing is that Shah Rukh Khan himself has worked as a kind of kintsugi. That means for the last 3 decades or so, he actually has brought people from different religions, cultures together. So he has actually worked as a kind of kintsugi. And here there is one very interesting book also, actually. I want to show you the image of this book. The title of this book is Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. This book is actually not about Shah Rukh as such. This book is about a particular class of women or a section of women actually who are bound by, say, in a way, Shah Rukh Khan's films. So that way, Shah Rukh Khan has played that role for the last 3 decades. And we can say that this is a kind of meta reference to his own work, his own star status. There is one particular reference in the film that is also very important. All through the film, you see that he is never defensive about the Pathaan identity. Shah Rukh Khan himself is not defensive about his Pathaan identity. Now, this also needs a little bit of footnote. When, for example, Ashok Kumar started working in films, he had to change his name because Ashok Kumar sounded more cosmopolitan. And when Dilip Kumar, Yusuf Khan became Dilip Kumar, then Dilip Kumar also appeared a more cosmopolitan name. That means Dilip Kumar, the name, and of course, that was also the period just before the partition. And there was that whole communal issue also. And the country was going through turbulent times. So at that time, if you see many Muslim actors, say, for example, after that also, Johnny Walker or Jagdeep and many others, they adopted actually Muslim, they adopted a more neutral name. Probably Feroz Khan was the first major actor who used his own name, Feroz Khan. So that way, if you see, for example, Shah Rukh Khan, now if you see his own persona also, so he uses his identity in real life also. Actually, if you see him, you'll see him making kind of salam this way gesture, and he is also very proud of his inclusive identity. That means where different cultures reside in him. At the same time, he has never been defensive about his Pathan identity. That means, and the same actually when the film, when I heard about the title of the film, I was a bit skeptical that how will this title Pathan be received. But then, of course, the filmmakers stuck to this title, and I think it is one needs to salute their actually conviction also. And similarly, if you see songs in the film, they also celebrate the character of Pathan. Now, if you think about his own life, then he has always talked about his freedom fighter father, his Pathan roots. But in the film, when there is a reference, when the character played by Deepika asks him uh, about his life, about the identity of Pathan, then he is evasive about that identity. Now, see this particular angle. He's a raw agent, and a raw agent must have had some identity, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, whatever. But here, this identity question is evaded. So what he says is that Pathan is a kind of adopted name. And when it becomes a kind of adopted name, means that it is not his real name, it is an adopted name. But this adopted name also becomes his identity. Very interesting line also used by Deepika. फिर लावारिस से खुदा गवाह कैसे बन गए? खुदा गवाह is a reference to Amitabh Bachchan's film where he plays a Pathan from Kabul. And Lavaris is also a reference to Amitabh Bachchan's film where he played an orphan. So, but here this character Pathan says that he was an orphan and he was found in a cinema hall. This is also interesting. That means when he was found in a cinema hall, this is also kind of metaphor for film industry. That means he has been brought up by film industry. That means all that identity that he has acquired that identity because of film industry. That means film has accepted him. Film industry has accepted him. The film world has accepted him. And so he was brought up by film industry. So that cinema hall, that he was found in a cinema hall, is a very interesting metaphor. But here, one very important thing about this identity is that this identity is a kind of inclusive identity. And now let us be very clear about it, that Pathan is a deeply political film. Any film makes some kind of statement at the beginning. And Pathan is also a very, very nationalist film. Pathan is also a very, very patriotic film. I must emphasize this. Pathan is a patriotic film. Pathan is a very deeply nationalist film. But here the idea of nationalism, the idea of patriotism is inclusive. That means here the idea of nationalism is not exclusive, that only these people can be called nationalists and others are outside that definition. Similarly, if we see the film in terms of world politics, in terms of global politics, then it also joins America's war on terror. Pathan was fighting in Afghanistan. But the character of Pathan is also very, very aware of collateral damage that war can bring. And he must make great efforts to avoid that collateral damage. That means here also it refuses to make a kind of binary that all Afghans, all Talibans are bad and Americans or America's allies are always good. It is not, in fact, entering into that kind of binary. I must give that reference. in one scene, actually, Pathaan saves a Maulvi. That means a bomb had to be dropped on a madrasa. That means, contrary to that discourse, all madrasas are not, these madrasas are also actually institutions of education. So whatever be the dominant discourse about them, and that person who was a kind of namesake, he was a poor Maulvi, just earning his livelihood like any teacher. So there actually it joins America's global war on terror, but at the same time, it also brings that subversive element. That means a question mark about collateral damage, a question mark about sweeping generalizations, a question mark about considering all Talibans or all madrasas or painting them in one color. That is a very important scene. That means killing innocent people, for example, cannot be the goal of war on terror. Similarly, uh, you can see that there is a very clear, unequivocal validation of the revocation of Article 370 in the film. Absolutely clear. And if you see the opening frame of the film, it shows a big mosque in Lahore, and then you see a Pakistani journal suffering from cancer, and here cancer also becomes metaphoric. Cancer also becomes metaphoric. That means a kind of sickness. And you see later that entire narrative of using chemical weapons, for example. And there, one very interesting thing is that there is difference of opinion between ISI, an ISI soldier, and a journal who is shown to be a rogue journal. So that means in one very interesting scene, the character played by Deepika says that I'm a soldier and this is not soldier's war. That means Pathaan also takes a stance against biological weapons in war. And there also actually, if you see that many films also actually, they indulge in very, very, say, aggressive Pakistan bashing. Pathaan stays away from Pakistan bashing that way. Now, let me just say expand this theme further. There is a scene there when the colonel or the Pakistani journal demands Kashmir. And one particular dialogue, which was made very popular by Sunny Deol's film Ghadar, दूध मांगा तो खीर देंगे, Kashmir मांगा तो चीर देंगे. Now, at that moment, I thought that probably something like that was coming up. But it was not that. But rather, if you see, and that is also open to interpretation, the character played by Ashutosh Rana, Colonel Luthra, he says that itni jaldi to kuch bhi nahi hota hai. That means there is some kind of, that is a kind of open-ended proposition. The demand is that remove army, remove all weapons. And the colonel does not say categorical no, but rather colonel says itni jaldi to kuch nahi hota. And of course, the character played by John Abraham is also sure that India, of course, Kashmir is integral to India, that he knows that. But here we don't see that kind of assertive denial from Colonel Luthra. So that way, if you see Kashmir Manga to Cheer Denge, that actually, that narrative, that tone is missing. I was thinking about another film actually, and that film, this was Fitur. This is a film where Tabu plays a very important role. It is set in Kashmir, and there the hero is an Indian, and what happens is that the hero loves a girl, and that girl actually falls in love with one Pakistani boy. Now, in one very interesting scene, and of course, the film is set in Kashmir. In one very interesting scene, a very reasonable character played by Siddharth Kapoor, but there is a whole parody of that line. दूध मांगा तो खीर देंगे, कश्मीर मांगा तो चीर देंगे. Repeatedly. That means that became his weapon against his rival in that film. So that means that kind of strident tone is missing. But make no mistake, because there is unquestioned validation of Article 370. There is unquestioned validation of India's stance on Kashmir. And there is unquestioned validation of patriotism and nationalism. But this patriotism and nationalism, as I said, it is inclusive in character. That means it does not create those binaries. Of course, there can be a very different kind of reading here, where one can say that the film actually is talking about right-wing politics. But I won't agree with that view, because if we see the whole ecosystem, where, of course, right-wing is pretty dominant, then within that ecosystem, Pathaan does try to create some space for subversion, some space for liberal voices. And I'll say that, as I said, that the film can be seen from different perspectives, from the perspective of intertextuality, from the perspective of Shah Rukh Khan's own assertion of his identity, and of course from many others. I think this is enough. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Asim. And now we invite Professor Mukherjee for the concluding remarks. Professor Mukherjee. Where is he? Is Professor? Yeah, he's here. Professor Mukherjee.
Yes, sir, I'm here. I'm sorry. There seems to be some technical issue.
Okay.
Yeah, he's there.
Sure. Please now join and start giving your concluding remarks.
Let me begin by thanking Raziuddin Sahab for inviting me to be part of this program. And it's always a pleasure and a privilege.
Turn on your video, sir.
Am I audible?
You are audible, but we cannot see you.
Okay. Am I visible too now?
Not yet.
Let me ask to already. You did? Ask to start video. Okay. Just click that the request.
Hello. Okay, I'll just rejoin.
As he rejoins, I can continue.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You see, here the character played by John, that is also very important. He actually is, it shows actually a very different face of terrorism now. That means terrorism which has been corporatized. That means this is a period of technology. This is a period of transnationalism. This is this terrorism becomes a kind of franchisee. There is definitely a reference to many terrorist organizations. But here, if you see that the film is also avoiding any direct link of terrorism to any particular religion. This is also very important, actually. The film is not talking about Islamic terrorism or this and that, but rather it presents a kind of corporate face of terrorism. So I think I found this also important. And so if you see that film, you can see that it is trying to avoid creating binaries.
Yeah, Is it still not there?
Yes, yeah. And in one particular scene, actually, the character played by Abraham also actually talks about, for example, army, and how, for example, people become kind of corpses. So that means thinking of army, but thinking of army in terms of dead bodies. That is also one very interesting reference in the film. And I would say that uh, the last scene, for example, when Shah Rukh Khan, the character played by Shah Rukh Khan, Pathaan, asks John that don't think what the country can do for you, think what you can do for the country. Of course, it is a very famous remark of John F. Kennedy. And of course, this particular remark is also used by many authoritarian rulers. What you can do for the country rather than what the country can do. That means here it shifts the focus away from rights to duties. So this way, in fact, I mean, there can be a very different line of interpretation of the film.
He is having difficulty in joining. He is still not there.
रजी भाई, आपने फिल्म देखी है?
Razi bhai, if you
बिल्कुल
allow,
देखिए सर।
Razi bhai, if you allow, then I can ask a question because I will be leaving in a couple of minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Or we
You
wait
sure?
for.
I mean,
So
what
yeah,
can we
because
do?
to fill in the time. So
Yeah.
I'm a moderator of question and answer moderator, and I'm not supposed to ask the question first. But with the due apology, I have to attend another obligation. So thank you very much, Asim Saab. It was an intellectual, insightful analysis of the movie. But as you said, that looks like we were watching two different movies at the same time, right? And every film has a negative. In spite of being this economic success, a complete huge economic success, it cannot be a best movie. And the discussion cannot be completed unless we talk about the negatives. And I was surprised that you didn't touch on that point at all. And the other,
All right.
hold on. And other
He is
point
back.
which was
He is back.
very important for this movie, you did not talk about the controversy generated for this movie. We have seen other movies flopping because of the controversies. Lal Singh was one of them. Another was Ranbir Kapoor's movie. So I know Sarvaji Saab is here, but remember those my questions. So I watched a different movie. You watched a different movie, but you put a very intellectual analysis. I have my own, and since I don't have time, so these are the questions I want to address. Okay, Sarvaji Saab, go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for this glitch. It has been an immense pleasure to listen to Professor Asim Siddiqui. I am a great admirer of his, nuanced way of approaching films. And yes, I agree that this film has been, it was born of controversy. I mean, and somehow or the other, we have got used to listening to so many controversies now whenever some new film is being launched, that it wasn't surprising. I mean, it's been once too often. But then, as Professor Asim pointed out so perceptively, that this film has actually acted as that kind of golden glue, which has brought all the fissiparous, broken, fragmented parts of our nation together into this beautiful carnivalesque kind of celebration of an inclusive kind of, well, for the want of a better word, let me use the word patriotism. But what struck me, and what I think Professor Asim also pointed out, that it does not look at the world in terms of black and white. There are good people across the world, there are bad people across the world, and it is the good which need to come together to form a brave new world. And I think that this Professor Siddiqui brought out this in a very, very, how shall I say, positive and in a very convincing manner. Plus, of course, all the other finer aspects of this particular film, which though it comes across as a great blockbuster, a kind of action film, a kind of larger than life figure doing larger than life actions. But underlying all that is this very subtle story of the director choosing to talk about people from demonized and excluded parts of the globe, and showing that, in fact, what eventually triumphs is the human and the humanist. So I really appreciate Professor Siddiqui for bringing out this nuanced interpretation of the film, and also pointing out all the technicalities which I, as a student of literature, was in fact they were totally new to me, and I found that a learning experience for myself. Otherwise, personally, I feel that the film is phenomenal, not only because of the kind of acceptance that it has garnered, but also because it has put back Bollywood on its feet. We were hearing the obituaries of Bollywood. We were hearing that a Hindi film is now is going into decline. But it has put back not only Shah Rukh Khan, but also Bollywood back on its feet. And I thank Professor Siddiqui for bringing out all these points in his talk. And I thank Professor Huma for introducing this particular film and the topic of today's discussion so very well. And of course, all my thanks to Mr. Raziuddin for having me here. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was quite brief and very direct. Whatever you wanted to say is quite well taken. And now this session, Rafat, you are still here for 10 for?
No, I will be here for 20 more minutes.
So continue and just let others ask questions. And
so the session is open for question and answer.
One second, Rafat. Just
please.
Question and answer. This is after 2 weeks gap. We won't be having two other Saturdays any event, and this will be back on Saturday, March 11. We have Professor Salil Mishra, Professor Bodh Prakash from Ambedkar University, giving a talk on linguistic roots of partition, culture, identity, and nation in the literature of partition. So after this announcement, now we are back to question answer session, and Dr. Rafat Hussain is going to be moderator for a brief time, and then either me or Faisal will take over.
I heard these two questions. I heard these questions, and I also heard Professor Hashima's question actually in the chat box. So if you permit me, I can react.
Yeah, you can lump together. And let me just thank you first, and then thank you, Professor Dr. Huma Parveen, for giving an excellent introduction, and Professor Mukherjee for the concluding remark. So the session is open for question and answer. You can raise your hand, digital hand, and of course, show your interest in chat box. So my due apology again that I, being a moderator, I should not have put the question first, but since I have to leave within 20 minutes, so I was just filling the time in between Mukherjee Saab. So please go ahead, Asim Saab.
Okay. Actually, two questions were actually, both questions were similar. Professor Hashma mentioned violence, actually, scenes of violence in the film and gory violence. And another incident that I saw in the chat box was, say, seeing a Pakistani doctor in a bikini, okay, and of course, dancing on a beach. And the first question of Rafa Saab talked about some negatives of the film. Actually, whenever we watch a film, whenever we watch a whenever we watch a Bollywood film, we go to the cinema hall keeping in mind some conventions of Bollywood films. For example, we bring certain expectations, and those expectations are that Bollywood films must have a song, Bollywood film must have some dance sequences. And actually, these are some aspects of Bollywood films which many of those who have not watched Bollywood film find very, very bizarre, actually. But since we are watching these films, we have grown up with these conventions. So that way, no Hindi film, for that matter, can be judged on the basis of verisimilitude. That means on the basis of realism as such. And if, for example, a Pakistani doctor is shown in a bikini dancing on a beach, uh, in a Hindi film, it is not unusual. Usually, if you see many such scenes in Hindi film where, for example, there are two characters and the same sex relationship has to be shown, or some other aspect of romance has to be shown, which is not acceptable. Films often will portray those things in outside locations, not in India. So it will be too much for a same-sex couple to have a wedding in a city like Jalandhar or Delhi. For that, they'll have to travel to Sydney. For that, they'll have to travel to Spain. So that means that is one specific convention of Bollywood films. So that way, many of us find that bizarre also. And on the basis of realism, actually, it cannot be judged. And similarly, violence also. I said at the beginning that the film defies all notions of causality, all logic. When you see, for example, characters flying in the air, fighting, so they are just an example of spectacle films. Actually, what has a film like RRR done? These are also a spectacle film. Many of these films, Bahubali was a spectacle film. We cannot judge these films on the basis of realism. So that way, when we watch a film, Hindi film, we do suspend our disbelief. We do suspend our disbelief. Otherwise, we know that hero, for example, 5 feet 8 inches tall Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, how can he fight so many people? Or say Amitabh Bachchan in Diwar, how can he fight so many people? So that can be considered a weakness. That can be considered defect, but that is also a convention. And this is one convention which we have grown up with. And that way, we suspend our disbelief for a while when we watch that film.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So the next person is Dr. Rudranshu Singh.
Sir, my question would be to Professor Siddiqui. His lecture was indeed enlightening. My question would be, had there been no controversy around Pathaan, would have been a hit? If there was no controversy at all and no one was paying any political attention to the release of the film.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that question again.
Actually, I personally feel a controversy can cut both ways. When, for example, Lal Singh Chaddha was released, there was controversy about that film also. And many other films actually have been released and there have been controversies about those films. So it is just, one cannot say that the film became hit because of controversy, but certainly any controversy, for example, does give a film some publicity. But whether the film can really become a hit, because there were controversies about many other films also, but they did not necessarily succeed. So
That
yes,
is what...
so yes, controversy did give the film some publicity, But I don't think that merely on the strength of a controversy, a film can succeed to this extent.
Okay, next person is my cause, and then somebody by name NA.
Well, thank you so much, Rafat. And Dr. Siddiqui, you put a very precise summary. I think everything that I wanted to say, you said it. One of the things that you mentioned is about the inclusive patriotism. And that is, there is a Muslim Pathaan, there is a Christian Abraham, Jim, and then other characters in the film. And I think it uplifted patriotism to a new level. Those people who are on the margins, whether they're Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians, they feel part of India. They feel patriotic about it. They feel that we are all one nation, one people. And that is one of the biggest message that I felt of the Muslims about the film. The question I have is for you. You said the word kansubi or something in Japanese. Could you type the spelling on that?
You are mute. You are muted. Unmute yourself.
Yes. Somebody will type in the chat box that word. Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, please. Somebody
Okay.
will type.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
somebody by the name NA. Go ahead,
Yes,
please.
am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, sir, I totally find this lecture as a part of English literature classroom. All the nuances, everything, the characterization, the technicalities, I completely agree. Feel like that I'm sitting in an English department classroom. But the topic is saying it's a phenomena of Pathaan. But I think, my dear speaker, forget to talk about the biggest part in this phenomena, which has become which has become the biggest economy of the film, which has become the reason of the success of the film. I think that is the part which I think he slightly touched, and I would love if he would have touched more. And just now someone pointed it out also, and he also answered that we cannot watch such film with realism. So I think I do not agree at all that why we shouldn't watch such film with realism. Then I don't think we need a word something like phenomena. When we call it phenomena, when we bring this much big discussion together, then that part shouldn't be untouched. And that part where which has been celebrated by almost everyone, that why the name, why the religion was not discussed, and why the name and the film is a pushing in a way that called inclusiveness, where that inclusiveness is basically denying someone's existence. That inclusiveness is not allowing to take the name of person from particular religion. That inclusiveness is telling that the person from particular religion is villain. And I think that is the most important thing to touch upon. And I think when it comes to phenomena, because of why, and many people are talking that this film bring back the Bollywood. I don't think so that this film bring back the Bollywood. One film cannot bring back the Bollywood. Bollywood not a small industry, it's a huge industry. And this film basically catering you use the word decisive politics, that catering that decisive politics, and that's how it bring back on the box office. And I'm not sure this will again happen with another film. Yes, the effect of Shah Rukh Khan, here I can understand the phenomena of Shah Rukh Khan work. But I think, sir, Professor, you should touch that this is about the decisive politics, about the realism. I completely disagree that when we are discussing with such big word phenomena, and we will untouch, because there is a film called RRR, and that should also be seen through the prism of realism, that why such big Adivasi leader has been reduced to one person who is saving a girl from the British. Because
Okay.
I'm yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, my question is
no,
little big,
we
but I'm sorry.
got your question, and thank you for putting in the right words, because we cannot get away from the realism. Being a sane person, we watch movie, we wanted to see something which is real. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I said at the beginning also that any film, for example, has so much to offer. Any film, and for example, Pathaan, this film actually exists at different levels. So for example, when you see those logic defying scenes, so certainly those scenes, that breathtaking action, I mean, it cannot be judged on the basis of realism, right? Similarly, those dance sequences, you cannot judge them on the basis of realism. But there is something called discourse about a film. What kind of discourse a film creates? And I'm using the word, say, in a sense in which it was used by somebody like Michel Foucault. So what kind of discourse is a film trying to achieve? So basically, that discussion will be very different. And as I said, that there is a possibility of a very different kind of reading for this film. There was, for example, somebody can talk this film purely from the perspective of Kashmir. That will be a very different kind of reading. And I saw something in the chat box. So that way, any film, for example, has different meanings. But as I said, that in a particular kind of ecosystem, it tries to create some space. When there is a particular kind of ecosystem and the film tries to create some kind of inclusive space, that is actually the whole beauty of this film. Otherwise, you can read this film very differently.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Tausif Saab, let me read Kaisar Naqvi Saab's comment because sometimes he has issues with audio. So, Muslims are portrayed as villain is an extension of CIA's project War on Terror. This this is not for this forum, but please go ahead. The Muslims are portrayed as villain is an extension of CIA's project War on Terror. And then coming back to Tausif Saab.
You don't have to respond to every question. In fact, if you feel controversial.
Okay, that's fine. Tausif Saab, please go ahead. Tausif Saab, let me see if he's there, if he's still here. I think he is not there. Anyway,
Sir, good evening, sir. I'm here.
Okay, go.
Yes, sir. Sir, good evening, sir. I think it was a very insightful and thoughtful lecture. Sir, I wanted to know that if you talk about every Hindi film, if you pick up any Hindi film randomly, every time, each and every film, Muslims, minorities, especially Muslims, portrayed as villains or bad characters. How do you think that this stereotyping is going to change soon?
I won't. No. Actually, I won't say every time, because I can tell you at least say 50 films where this portrayal is not there. So I mean, I won't make these sweeping generalizations. Of course, many films made in the last say 10 years or so, there is a dominant say, for example, Muslim villain that way. That is the. But I won't make a kind of sweeping generalization, because I can talk about number of films actually where this is not true.
Okay. Kaisar Naqvi Saab, do you have a different question or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Asim Saab, thank you very much for a very, very educative and very enthralling lecture. I just want to say that, you'd mentioned that Yusuf Khan taking of the name Dilip Kumar and Madhubala and things like that. But that was true for on the other side of the border also in Pakistan. We had Santosh Kumar and we had Darpan, and I can name quite a few, because that time I think those names are basically ensured commercial success. Your comment, please. Your comment, please.
Yeah. Actually, as I said, that Ashok Kumar sounded more cosmopolitan. Okay, Dilip Kumar sounded more cosmopolitan, right? So that way, I mean, it could have a kind of all India appeal. And Say, for example, Yusuf Khan, maybe it was tied to a particular identity, but Ashok Kumar or Dilip Kumar, there was a better feel about those names in terms of their all India appeal, greater appeal. That was the reason, yeah.
Okay.
Rafat, next question. So the next question is from S. Sen, that is probably Shukla Sen.
I'm still here. Sorry, I was on mute.
I thought that.
Okay. Mr. Sen.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, a film has different aspects. Only one aspect is message or discourse or whatever. The other aspect is, of course, the aesthetic quality. There can be a third aspect, the technical excellence of a film. So now if we look at all the three, so far as the message is concerned, in this film, a Muslim has been put at the head of a daredevil team fighting against quote-unquote terrorism, and thereby it has definitely challenged the dominant discourse here, and it has tried to create a space and all that, it's true. But all at the same time, it has portrayed Pakistan as the eternal villain. That's point one. And the second point is that don't ask what the country can do for you, and do what you can for the country. I must say, that's a rotten cliche. It's a very dangerous cliche. And not only that, the film ends with the hero spending his life as a part of a terror fighting team to work for the army, actually, who are the paid people to kill and get killed if required, is the highest and the most sublime thing that a person can do. That's the film has portrayed. So far as the message is concerned, one positive message, and I would say two negative messages, discourse or whatever. So far as aesthetic part is concerned, I personally, I see very few films, and because of the controversy and the box office success and all that, I went to see the film. I personally found it quite stupid. Technically, it is of course excellent. I believe it must compete with any Bollywood film. That's my point. Please comment on that.
I think
its box office success is because of the fighting scenes. I believe because of the fighting scenes, and there is as such no sex scene, but there are dancing scenes. Fighting is almost continuous and peppered with dancing, scintillating dancing.
All right.
Dance scenes.
Okay.
That's all.
Actually, as I said, that nobody has a magic formula to produce a hit film. So when many things come together, a film becomes a hit. Otherwise, every film by big producers, say for example, Yash Chopra or Aditya Chopra, it will become a hit film. And similarly, and somebody like Aditya Chopra has said this, that if it were in their hands, they could have made their brother or Yash Chopra's son, Uday Chopra, a star. So actually, there is no magic formula. And as I said, that make no mistake, this film is a patriotic film. This film is a nationalist film. So that way, any definition of nationalism, for example, any definition of patriotism, for example, cannot keep Pakistan out of the picture. But as I said, that within that space, if you see the film, there is no bashing of Pakistan. Something that you see, for example, in that kind of discourse, which that line from Sunny Deol's film. And similarly, when you see, for example, Pakistan also there in that film, and a character from Pakistan, say, for example, ISI there. So you can say, okay, she is dancing on the beach. But you can also say that here is a character who is talking about a soldier's pride, and a character from within that country taking a stance against biological weapons. So that way, of course, I mean, a very pacifist reading of the film will denounce all violence, all talk of nationalism, all talk of patriotism, or in fact, army killing people. and I think I'm repeating this point and from last time, that within that space, there is some space actually. Within that ecosystem, there is some space.
All right. So if not any question, not anyone is raising hand. So is it now time that we can ask? Yes, please go ahead. Have a brief question.
Yeah, but not a question. I think as a previous one of the speakers, I was thinking about that. Even though I haven't seen, I'm from the South, Tamil Nadu. I haven't watched many Hindi movies, including Pathaan. And then I've read commentaries about it. And then I was thinking about the RRR and versus Pathaan. So how does these two movies compare in the Indian social the context?
Good, thank you.
Actually, I haven't seen RRR.
I see. Okay.
So I cannot comment on RRR. I have only read about RRR. So it will not be fair on my part.
Okay.
To
Thank
comment
you.
on RRR. Yeah.
All right. Let me pick up few people. And Professor Manojit Chatterjee, would you like to say something? Professor Chatterjee from Cambridge.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I found it a really interesting talk. I haven't seen the film because, like somebody else, I find gratuitous violence on film really doesn't float my boat at all. But the ideas behind that film are important. Showing a Muslim as the head of an anti-terrorist outfit, for instance. But it is disturbing that, and whilst I agree with Asim Saab that doesn't seem to be direct bashing of Pakistan, but it really, one of the most distressing things about the Indian media in general, not just the film industry, is that we have as much of an obsession with Pakistan as they have with us. And I find this really, I can understand why Pakistan has an obsession with us. They couldn't exist without us, but we can exist quite cheerfully without them. So why do we have to continuously, focus on all their misdeeds or all their sadnesses and make a big thing of it? This is something which defeats me in a mature democracy. Why we do this sort of thing. And notice, interestingly, what is this obsession with Pakistan? If you're obsessed with them, why is Bangladesh not important? It's a majority Muslim part of this world, right? And yet it's ignored completely. And just as it was ignored in Pakistan, people in the West, Pakistan was always West Pakistan. East Pakistan was a kind of little minor colony stuck out there. Bangladesh is not in the news. And yet it is the most successful nation in the subcontinent in some ways. Its rate of growth is higher than India's. It's doing extremely well on education. It has done very well on gender equality, etc., issues of that sort. So it's a pretty inclusive, progressive, democratic nation. We don't talk about it. But we have this obsession with our Northwest cousins. I'm not sure why that's the case. Thank you.
Yes, Kamlesh Saab, are you asking for a question? No? Okay. So, let's stick to the film Pathaan and not on any other political matters. But obviously, there are, in movies, there are some sensitive places which make movie a little bit more entertaining or interesting. That's why these names come. I'm sure that mentioning of Pakistan gives some certain more audience and all those, or maybe some other reasons. So let's not go into that. Tariq Farooqi Saab, Sayyid Amir Saab, any other fellow, Sayyid Hussain Saab, aap log kuch kehna chahein. If you want to raise a question or a brief comment, you're most welcome. Or anybody else. I cannot start taking names of everyone. And if not, then we can thank the speakers. Or Amir Bhai?
Question, please.
I'm sorry, I have nothing to say.
I have a question.
I have not.
Okay. One second.
anything I say will be based on ignorance, but I enjoyed the talk and the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kamlesh Mohan, please quickly ask question if you want, and unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. I think there is a technical problem for the lady. It's okay. So I think it is about time. Asim Sahib, you must be feeling very tired. 1 hour, 40 minutes, almost.
In the film also there is intermission to go to washroom.
आपका सबसे अच्छा वैसे सीन में एक ये भी था, तो familiar with Aligarh, that we heard the train going behind your house. I think it was. I heard the Aligarh railway, the train sound. I think
you can still hear.
I could at that time. It was very quite entertaining. But anyway, intermission means you want to continue. Do you want to continue, Asim Sahab? Yeah, isko officially finish karke let's
finish. No, it's already actually 15 minutes past 11 here.
Yeah. So that's why I was giving you the liberty to, if you want to leave, then we can start.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And,
thank you so much.
Yeah, and most likely we really enjoyed it. It was a very different kind of event, and we learned a lot. And people don't see or talk about movies in that depth, but we should, especially big movies like Satyajit Ray movie.
Yeah,
always talked about.
Razi, we will miss the 2 sessions and.
Yeah, 2 sessions.
On Saturdays, but
yeah, so
nice and safe trip.
Amir bhai, kya karenge 2 week?
2 Urdu sessions. 2 Urdu
sessions. If you permit, can I leave?
Yes. Yeah. Please. I will see you in Aligarh, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
And I thank all friends for taking their time and actually attending to this talk. And I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, wonderful talk. Wonderful analysis. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bye. So, आमिर भाई, मैं मिलूंगा उन लोगों से दिल्ली में. Actually, आपने ये जितने